Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Great to be with you. It's game week. And let's start with State High. Somebody said to me, either State High is really good or Gateway is really bad. You were there, and your thought is?
State High, I think, offensively has to figure out running game a little bit. I think Lamar Wilson did a good job on a couple drives, but that's the one part offensively that I think is still up in the air. But other than that, I thought they looked great. Defense is as good as advertised. I think the front seven's very good. On the back end, they had 2 pick sixes. So I think you can't ask for a better job defensively for what they gave. And offensively, I think they have a lot of weapons. Eddie Corkery, I think, has shown his maturity at quarterback already through this first game. I think you're starting to see what he learned last year. And obviously, Salaz at receiver is incredible. I think if he had more size, he would get a lot more college looks. I think that's the one thing that a lot of people look at. He has that Julian Edelman vibe a little bit, I think, when you look at what he's able to do. But yeah, I think State High looked real good. I don't think Gateway is real bad. I think they've got a lot of bright spots ahead of them. They have a freshman quarterback that I thought played real well. Now, yes, he threw the 2 pick sixes, but he kept plays alive the entire game. I can't tell you how many snaps were just bad snaps that hit the ground, or he was kind of running for his life, threw on the run. I thought he did a great job, and I think Gateway has a couple of young guys. They do have some veterans, but a couple of young guys that I think they can build on. I don't think Gateway is really bad. I just think they're one of those teams where they beat the teams they should. They struggle against the teams they should, too. I think they play North Allegheny this week. North Allegheny's a machine. I don't see them winning that game. But I don't think it's Gateway being really bad. I think State College still has room for improvement, as anybody always does, obviously, after week 1. But I thought overall they looked pretty good.
Okay. Opening week. You wonder why people get frustrated with ESPN. They do the game out in Ireland, okay, and it turns out to be a terrific game.
Great game.
Let's get to the key is the fact that Georgia Tech's offensive line won the game.
I agree,
because
big plays on
Georgia Tech's offensive line shortened the game.
Sure, absolutely,
running games when they're effective shorten the game. So in other words, Florida State did not have anywhere near the number of possessions.
No, you're keeping their strength off the field
that they needed. To win the game. And when you can run the football like Georgia Tech did, and you're lengthening their possessions, and thus making sure that Florida State doesn't get 14 possessions in a game. And now you're really doing something. And Brent Key had his team well prepared. Haynes King, they ran him 15 times. It was a good win. Now let's get to the end of the game. Over and over, it's about Georgia Tech. They haven't beaten the top 10 teams. They haven't going on and on. Did they once mentioned at the end of the game, I don't mean maybe later in the studio, at the end of the game, did they ever mention that was a conference loss for Florida State?
Yeah, not one time.
Because remember, the four conference champions get the automatic bid in and don't have to sweat out the at-large process. Okay? This doesn't mean Florida State can't play in the championship game and win it. They can. But their road now, because they lost this game, becomes difficult, because now they've got to make sure they really essentially have to be perfect the rest of the way in the conference. I mean, it's only an 8-game conference. Remember, it's only 8.
Right.
So they're going to be playing from behind. Clemson's going to play in their opener, but they're playing Georgia. It's a non-conference game. So now Florida State is playing from behind not just in the at-large pool, they're playing from behind in the conference championship pool because of that. Where was that explanation? Instead of the blah, blah, blather we get about they haven't Georgia Tech. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, well, I don't know what that has to do with this year's team. Just tells me they're really good. And guess what? They've got a leg up now in the ACC because they won that game. Florida State is playing from behind now in the ACC because they lost that game. Okay? It doesn't mean Florida State can't get to the championship game, but their road just got tougher to get to it because they can't really afford another conference loss somewhere.
No.
Yeah, they play Clemson later in the year. Can they afford to lose that game? Especially if there's another team out there that has one loss? I don't know.
Especially if that team's Clemson. Absolutely not.
Well, no, but you'd have one team. Clemson may be the team that's the one, and they have to play somebody in the championship game. You've got to play somebody else. Could it be North Carolina? Could it be whatever? Or it could be Georgia Tech. And guess who has the tiebreaker? Georgia Tech does. See, that's what that meant. They have won X amount of ACC games in a row. Well, look, half these guys weren't even there for most of them. Okay, that's nice. It's a nice little graphic thing to put up in the whole thing. But this is the 12-team playoff era now. Okay? There are things to think about.
Sure.
Each week of the season. That's why I love the regular season isn't as relevant anymore. Are you warped? Okay, 9%.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, well, we've heard it. You've heard it.
Oh, no, that's terrible.
9% of the teams make the playoff. 9. Not 90.
You gotta be
not
me.
50. Okay, 91% don't make it. So there's going to be these little things here and there that'll come up that have to be looked at every week. And I also think it makes the regular season in November exponentially more relevant than it was before. So these are all setting up for us to get there. For all we know, Florida State runs the table.
Yeah.
Gets to the ACC championship game, wins it, automatically in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
right. Or they stumble someplace else along the line and like, they've got two problems here. Getting to the ACC title game, and where are they in the at-large pool?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I go the flip side of November meaning exponentially more, which it does. Early season now does too. Yeah. You're not in a spot where you can have that early season loss, especially if in this case, if it's a conference game.
Right.
Where
you can have an early season loss.
And build back on it.
And you can build back, and you're a 10-2 team, and you're right in the thick of the at-large pool. But my point on the ACC is simple. How many do they get?
Yeah.
Do they get 2?
I don't think so.
Do they get just the champion? See, that's my point. Yeah. They may only get the one bid.
The champion. Yeah, at that conference, to me, you're only getting the champion. But, and my point is there where you're now more level, I think. The November loss, as much as it hurts, that early season loss hurts as equal now. You're not in the old era of college football where you can bounce back as easily if it's a conference loss in the beginning of the year, because as you just said, it's a tough task now ahead for Florida State, especially in the ACC. Because if I'm looking at it right now, I think the ACC is going to get one. And look, we're 1 week in, I get that, but judging by past success and lack of in the conference, I think the ACC is probably going to get one.
Yeah. And that's the issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
You could maybe be an SEC team or a Big Ten team, have a conference loss, maybe 10-2, and still make it.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're an ACC team that's not in the championship game or loses the championship game, you might not make it.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, that was the significance for a Florida State loss in the opener. It wasn't just, okay, they lost the opener, they can bounce back from that. They lost the opener in the conference. and in a conference that might only get the one bid.
Yeah, people, I think, at this point, continue to pay too much attention to rankings. I think you're looking at Florida State, it's a top 10 team.
Yep.
Sure they are, but that conference loss is going to mean a lot more now that we're in the era we are in, where there's a 12-team playoff. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and these are all things that I realize there's always the we always I always refer to it as overreaction Monday, but when you were analyzing this, all right, on a week by week basis, it's not overreaction. We're just telling you that, hey, look, the season may play out where the ACC only gets the champion. Maybe they'll get a second team. They're not getting three.
I don't think so.
Okay, I think it's right.
I think there's a better chance Big Ten and SEC get three teams than the ACC gets two.
All right,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah, I
So that's what the significance of this loss is, because it's more than just, okay, it's a loss. Hey, they can bounce back from that. They're in a conference that doesn't bring enough power to it to make.
No, absolutely not. And we've seen it. Yeah, yes, Clemson has won national championships. You can't discredit that. Clemson's also lost in the first round of the playoffs quite often. It is a team that I don't think, and it's a conference that I don't think is battle-tested when you enter. And, yeah, look, I'm not going to compare Florida State last year. And they ran into a buzzsaw. Georgia was very good. A lot of Florida State wasn't there at the end of the year. But I think with the ACC, it is a conference that just does not have that aura that the Big Ten and the SEC have at all.
No, it does not. And now it may play out. And again, we're going to have to see how it plays out. By mid-October, we may have completely different thoughts on this. But at this point, right, as a starting point for Florida State, it immediately puts them on the comeback trail, not just in the at-large pool, but it puts them on the comeback trail in the ACC pool.
Right.
Right? So that, I mean, and the fact that it wasn't mentioned, I'm talking about the game broadcast. The game broadcast. Like, come on. That's part of what you're supposed to talk about. Okay? We can do all the big picture stuff we want in the face of the earth. Like, so, Trevor, what do you think, who are your playoff teams? Asking on October 1st. Right? Oh, and you sit there as a hostage watching this on TV, waiting for, okay, come on, let's go here. Like, let's get back to the game. Trevor doesn't have a vote, right? But then you get to this, which, like, right away has a dual implication, including the conference part of it. It's not brought up. Now, I didn't watch the studio show.
No, I didn't either.
All right, so it certainly may have been brought up in the studio show, the studio portion of it. I'm sure it was. But how can you not bring it up in the game broadcast? That's the game. I just kind of sat back and went, you got to be kidding me. That's just me.
No, it's a great point. I think that especially now, we're in. It's not necessarily a different era, but it's a much bigger picture era. I think when it comes to college football, now that we're seeing the playoff being a 12-team field,
sure,
and that's really now the teams that there were teams that I think you can relate to that were on the outside looking in that you expect to be in.
Yeah,
and Florida State's one of those teams. And now they have a conference loss. You're looking now at that, and you have to look at how they have to play through the rest of the year now to get into the playoff. Because I do feel like the ACC is probably, unless something really changes, I think they're getting one. I don't think they're getting two.
Now, look, Clemson looks like they have a good team, but like the game against Georgia,
Klubnik's got to be more consistent.
But the game against Georgia, just to start out, look, it's not a conference game.
No.
But can they do they end up with a good to respectable or maybe even a winning performance. Like, wow. So you'll look at that game. But it's a non-con game. Okay, well, it's a non-con game, so okay. As a non-con game, let's see how that one plays out. But North Carolina looks like they're a pretty good team. NC State, okay, who knows? Georgia Tech won that game.
Yeah.
They won.
Yep.
Right? North Carolina, I've heard Mac Brown talk. Mac Brown thinks he's got a pretty good team. Mac Brown normally has a pretty good feel for his teams. Okay, we'll find out. But it was a weekend where Montana State is way behind in Albuquerque on Saturday night. So an FCS team. And in the final 6.5 minutes, they rally and win.
Mm-hmm.
Couple big interceptions, a 93-yard run. Montana State rallied. I mean, New Mexico had complete control, it appeared, on its home field. Lost. Then there's SMU Nevada. Nevada's really struggled in recent years. But SMU struggled with them, and SMU scored 16 unanswered points in the fourth quarter and won the game, including a safety. The safety kind of turned things around. And I watched that game, and SMU was in trouble all night long, and then finally came back and won the thing.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of weekend it was. It was not just a rubber stamp, okay, opening week 0. Montana State wins at New Mexico, rallied to win. SMU struggles all night with Nevada, had to rally to win. Okay? And then there's the Georgia Tech win over Florida State. It was anything but a standard
No, absolutely
week 0.
not. And absolutely not. And touching with the playoff, I think it's for Clemson. I think you put yourself in great position in this game, no matter what, coming up on Saturday. I think if you
I don't agree with you.
I
on
feel
that.
like if you get blown out, which could happen, I think it still opens up plenty of opportunity in the season. You look at Oregon in 2022. I think is a prime example. Crushed by Georgia.
Okay, I agree with that part of it.
Yep, that's where I'm looking.
But remember, what was Clemson's record in the ACC last year?
Yeah.
4-4.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm going.
If they go in there and they get their confidence shot.
Yeah.
Okay. After a 4-4 ACC season, remember when they played to begin the season? I think DJ was the quarterback.
Yes.
And they played, and the game I think was 10-3. Was the final?
Yep.
Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of. I turned off TV. Said I'm like, man, that's a darn good football game. Those are two pretty good teams. That was a good, hard-fought game. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Clemson didn't win, but you're like,
yeah, they're at least there.
Yeah, but you're like, no, you kind of like.
Yeah.
I turned the TV off and went, oh, those are two really good teams. So Clemson could win, and you could feel that way. Clemson could be in a game like that. You feel like that.
Way. Yep.
But what if Georgia
just obliterates,
pounds them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now Clemson falls off the radar for at least a month. Okay?
Yeah.
There's no way to make up for that game.
No.
In the national consciousness, there's no way to make up for the game. No. They could get to the ACC championship game, be 8-0. Okay. They were in the ACC championship game last year. Weren't they last year? No, they weren't.
No,
they weren't. 2 years ago.
Yep.
2 years ago, because I spent like 5 minutes or so at their practice before that game, because Penn State was playing basketball there. Hey, why don't you come on over, take a look? I said, okay. I'll do it.
I still think Clemson opening the season against Georgia is a lot better than opening the season against Pitt. I think from a confidence perspective, last year, they lose that game to Pitt. Klubnik didn't play well at all. I think then your confidence is shot a lot more than losing to a team that is a national championship contender in Georgia. I think that's where I'm looking at it. I think from that perspective, I think, they can't get blown out. I agree. But I think if they are competitive in this game, I don't want to say it doesn't mean anything. It's still a loss in the column no matter what. But I think when you look at it, if they're able to be competitive against Georgia, that could be a little bit of a springboard for them.
But there's a confidence to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think, to me, it's how Klubnik plays. I think he's going to be a guy that is going to be scrutinized in a big way. This is a guy that, again...
So's Carson Beck.
There's no doubt.
Okay,
Yeah.
in that part, it is the nature of the position.
Absolutely. And it's the nature also of where you were stature-wise. We're looking at a guy like Klubnik, Gatorade Player of the Year, came in as a freshman, had moments that I thought you looked at him and said, hey, this guy could be a Heisman Trophy candidate. Then last year, obviously fell back. And this year, I think, is going to be a big story for him.
Well, I always, remember DJ Uyunglele was going to be a Heisman candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still moving around a lot, trying to find his spot. It wasn't like he played poorly on Saturday.
I thought he played all right, especially in the clutch. They came up a big third and fourth down conversions on that last drive.
I mean, he's not playing defense trying to stop their running game.
No, he put him in position. He tied the game.
So, but because I was talking to my class today, I said, you people are going to find out that there are a lot of things like in sports I no longer care much about. I said, because experience tells you that it really is not something big to care about.
Right.
But that's where the start. Now we get to West Virginia. Now West Virginia can run the football. So let's remember that. That is one of those line items when you sit there and you look at teams, okay, at home, do they have the ability to shorten the game with their running game? If you can control their running game, if you can control it, which then means that you get the ball back and they don't have it anymore, and it becomes a, quote, normal game, they will struggle in a normal game.
Yeah.
But if they control the ball and the clock, which then keeps your offense on the sideline, okay, now you've got, more of an issue where you don't panic, but it's like facing the basketball team that runs the shot clock down to 5 to 8, right? Takes the shot. And how many times do you see teams that after playing defense for 23 to 25, 26 seconds, they get the ball back, they race down the floor, and they fire up a shot? Like right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, just play your game. I mean, it's like, and I see it all the time, right? They get frustrated playing so much defense. They finally get an offense. All right, let her fly. No, just run the offense.
I think two things. Obviously, number one, I thought the game plan last year for them was great. Go between the tackles. They were able to effectively do that in the first half last year, kept it a competitive game. But the second part of it, to me, and James Franklin, you remember he made the comment how many years ago when they played Pitt that every week was the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And that's, I think, the mentality that Penn State has. West Virginia, on the flip side, I think they're looking at this game as their Super Bowl. Sure. I don't think they're looking beyond this game, period, from a season perspective. Obviously, you focus week to week, opponent to opponent. But I think from their perspective, you talk about a confidence matter. This is a game for them that I think they've had circled for a year. And this is obviously going to be one for them where I think their confidence can get hit in a big way. But I think mentality coming into the game is a little bit different. I think for Penn State, every week there's a challenge. Every week, as James Franklin said, is every week is the Super Bowl. And from West Virginia's perspective, I don't know if they look at it that way. I think they're looking at this game obviously is circle games, yes, and no question about it. And it's almost impossible for 22, 23-year-old guys to not circle November. From Penn State perspective, you're looking at November 2nd. It's circled, of course. You're focused on West Virginia, but of course, you know that you play Ohio State. You know that you're playing on the road against USC. But from a West Virginia perspective, this game, to me, I think is going to tell a lot.
Well, West Virginia, you want to force them to win the game by throwing the ball.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean Garrett Green can't throw the ball. It doesn't mean Garrett Green can't make plays in the passing game.
He's an effective player, but I think
you want Garrett Green to attempt to beat you by throwing the football and not running the football.
I agree.
That gives you a much better chance of controlling the game. Penn State's offense is going to be interesting, but I want everybody to keep this in mind. If you had to handpick anybody in the opener to play Penn State, and you'd say, that group actually knows Penn State pretty well, it would be West Virginia.
Yeah.
Not because of last year's game.
Yeah.
Because guess what? What conference are they in?
Yeah.
What conference is Kansas in? They played every year, so they do have an understanding. Andy Koltonicki has an understanding of West Virginia, but West Virginia has an understanding of Andy Koltonicki. Right? Haven't heard that brought up anywhere. But, okay, playing a Big 12 team in the opener, just by happenstance, and you've hired a coordinator that came from the Big 12, at least what he does, now he hasn't done it with this personnel, but they have at least have experience of facing what he does and maybe what his play calls could be in certain situations. Conversely, he also knows what West Virginia does and what their defensive play calls might be in certain situations. So that's an interesting part of the side story chess match in the opening game. So, I mean, we'll see. And finally it's here. I mean, it's like after a while.
No doubt about it.
After a while, you're like, let's go.
Yep,
Let's play
no
ball.
question about it.
Let's get this thing moving here. And the game I want to watch outside of Penn State, I want to see the LSU-USC game.
LSU-USC will be a good game. I think there's a lot of intriguing matchups, I think, week one. Obviously, you have LSU-USC. I think I'm excited for that game, too. I'm excited for Notre Dame and Texas A&M. I think that game...
What time's that game?
That's the late one, I think. That's the primetime game, I believe.
I might be able to see the second half.
I think that is the late game. But, I'm excited for that game. And I think, obviously, the Penn State game. There's going to be some great matchups here, week one. You get right out of the gate with college football to see really what we have in front of us. And obviously, mentioned it earlier, Clemson, Georgia, being that noon game. Those of you that hate the noon kickoffs, there's a big game at noon. How's that? I don't care what time anybody plays.
Well, Georgia and Clemson's a noon game.
That's what I'm talking about.
But, I mean, it's like...
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's Clemson and Georgia's at noon.
God...
Yeah,
that's just roll with the punches.
That's
okay. Okay, I understand for a home game.
Yeah,
I understand for a home game that it does take a little more.
Sure, it takes.
You have to leave earlier.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things, that are inconvenient.
Everybody's going in at the same time.
As opposed to playing, even if the game were at 1:30, for example, like the old days, way back when, which really is the ideal. That really is the ideal time to play college football. It's 1:30 in the afternoon.
I would move it at least to 1. Yep.
Noon kind of like, okay.
Yeah, the only thing with a noon game to me, and look, I am in the minority. I love Big Noon. I think it is phenomenal. I think the coverage is incredible. But
I don't watch it.
Yeah, well, when Penn State's playing, I'm there. But I think, to me, the drawback of noon from a home game perspective, and it's not just here, anywhere, in Columbus and Ann Arbor, everybody's coming into the stadium at the same time. There's no traffic division, so to speak. Yeah, that is the one thing for me that is tough. I think from a fan's perspective, it's incredibly tough, and that, to me, is where, when you complain, you have a good gripe. But I think there's no question that makes it a lot more difficult.
Sure,
that one I would agree.
And that part I've got.
Yeah, I've got that for sure too.
I understand that part,
but in terms of
I understand the pain in the neck of getting there early, the traffic with it.
That's what I mean. Everybody getting in.
There's a lot of issues with it, but
in terms of what time the team plays, I don't think they care if they play at 3 a.m.
Wow,
it's you're still playing each other.
It's a
big game, no matter what.
Penn State never plays well, and I was like, oh, for goodness sakes, they're fine. Okay, stop thinking so much; it only hurts the club. All right, so
I can tell you plenty of primetime games they started out slow. I can tell you plenty of primetime games they started out on fire. It's not. Yeah, no, I agree.
it's like, let's not overthink it. Well, suddenly there's some magic potion out there where X team, hey, noon, I know they.
No.
God's sakes, Penn State played. Was that game at Ohio State in 2017 at noon?
That game at Ohio State 2017 was 3:30.
3:30.
Yeah,
okay.
it was 3:30.
I was going to say because Saquon ran the opening
kickback. Yep.
Look, I don't.
They played Wisconsin here in a terrible. That was when we got that terrible ice storm in November, and they started off just fine in that game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look.
Yeah, it's no. I don't. Yeah, I don't go with that.
I don't worry about
the
that
only
stuff.
time you may have a point, and it doesn't happen often, not from a Penn State perspective, is when that West Coast team comes east or vice versa. Because the time change sometimes is tough for some people. And some of the players, they've done.
You're talking about for them. It's 9 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. That is where you have. I think you make a point at times when the start can be off. But on the flip side of that, I think from a college and a professional standpoint, teams have done a much better job with that over the last 5 to 10 years.
Actually, the West Coast teams in the NFL,
they stay in east for the whole week.
They've been fine.
Yeah.
You know, but they're pros, so they can do things that colleges can't do.
Right.
So, Pat Kraft evidently has been extended through 2032. You know, I don't think Penn State's put out a release on that. I don't think, but there's the stories out there. Look, he's come in, and I know there's going to be a lot of the, you know, it's always about the money part of it, which I understand. Yeah, they did. They put it out through June of 2032. So, look, and they put out the compensation part and the whole thing, which I'm fine. Oh, that's nice. Pat Kraft has come in here, and you know, let's start with other people before this. People like Dave Joyner and Sandy Barber had to guide Penn State through some challenges, right? And they need to they needed to do maybe a few things because of the challenges. Pat's been able to come in off of that, and he's been able to attack athletics in its current state. You have to attack the job now where you look at your building and say, okay, I have a building that has been there since 1960. I have parts of that building that have been there since the 1930s and 40s, 30,000 seats of it. Okay? They moved it over. They didn't change that part out, you know. And so when I'm looking at least the base part of the building, of being 64 years old, what can I do with it? Now, I took a walk around the stadium on I didn't do it Saturday because I just watched the scrimmage Saturday. But I walked around. I think they were in there Wednesday, and I walked around, and you can't see this from the outside, but the escalators they're putting in those corners on the east side. Like, wow, it's the first time I'd seen it, only because from the outside you can't see it. So, and these are things that had to be done. I've mentioned so many times, look, in 2017 when this came out, they should have started construction that day. Now, just because I said they should have started construction that day, that's not being critical. Because when it came out, I said the sooner they do it, the better, because a $450 million price tag is going to be $1 billion if they wait 10 years. That's just experience over the years of seeing projects escalate, including Olympic villages and things like that end up like, hey, we bid 8 years ago on this, and now it costs this much. We can't believe it. That's where that comes from. Well, Patch is doing it now because if you don't do it now, you don't do it now, it's going to be over $1 billion.
Agreed.
Later.
Absolutely.
And you can't keep doing Band-Aids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am also a big believer, always have been,
mm-hmm.
if you are going to do it right, do it right the first time.
Absolutely.
Instead of, well, we got to cut a corner here, cut a corner there. No, if you got a chance to do it right the first time, do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's been doing with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same thing with the push on Jeffrey Field. And Sandy was a big push on Jeffrey Field too, right? But the push on Jeffrey Field, huge, makes a big difference. He sees things in a common sense manner. Like, excuse me, that doesn't make any sense. We need to do this in a certain way.
Yeah.
He backs his student athletes. He backs his coaches. He's been an excellent administrator to this point, through and through. He's been what I think everybody here hoped he would be, and he's an energetic force as an athletic director. Also, by having him sign a contract through 2032, June of 2032, that's a stabilizing contract. It stabilizes the athletic department. When that stadium is built, he'll still have 5 more years to go in his contract. Not just like, okay, we're done, and take off, go there. No, he's got 5 more years.
Yeah.
So that's big.
Yeah, and especially, I know people look at the number and say, "Whoa, how do they afford that?" Well, I look at it this is a little bit of a tough example just because you're essentially replacing one with the other. But from our perspective, just the casual person on the outside looking in, think about a car. How many times do you Band-Aid it before? Hey, you know what? You're going to need to upgrade.
Oh, we're talking about your car again?
Well, not mine. But it's anybody for that matter. How many times
I turn around, it's another problem with your car.
That car that is dead out no longer with me now.
Your car you hated.
Well, I can name quite a few people that have cursed their cars out. But that just from that perspective, I think is one way to look at it. Yes, the average Joe is not outright paying a car. That's something you need to look at, and over time you Band-Aid it so many times, and then you say, hey, okay, we're gonna have to upgrade here. And that's, I think, from Penn State's perspective, right now that's a $700 million bill, as you said. 3 years from now, that's not $700 million.
Exactly.
That's not going to be anywhere close.
And you don't just sit there and go, well, okay, well ends up with nothing. Yeah. Okay, well ends up with Band-Aids, and then people complain later, like, well,
and that's the point. I think that it has to be emphasized more. Let's take a fan walking into Beaver Stadium. Let's say they didn't do any renovations. They walk into Beaver Stadium this year. Guarantee you, here's what they got to do. They got to do this. They really got to upgrade this. They really got to upgrade this. They're taking the time to upgrade it now. You're complaining about it, but when it's all said and done, you're not going to complain about it. That's why I think the biggest point. People complained when they tore down the old Yankee Stadium. You waited in line to go to the bathroom for an hour and a half at Yankee Stadium.
All right.
It's a lot different now. It's much better. That, I think, is the biggest thing when you're looking at this. Yes. Is any kind of construction, no matter what, a pain sometimes? Sure it is.
Sure it is.
But when it's all said and done, the end result is usually 99.9% of the time to benefit you, not them.
That's right.
To benefit you, and it will make your experience a lot better.
Yeah. I had to laugh that somebody's like, they put a fence up on the east side of the stadium. I'm like going, yeah, and?
Exactly.
I mean, I went by Porter Gardens this morning at Medler Field. They had a fence around that.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Yeah.
Right. Look, when you go to Fenway Park, okay, one of the items that Penn State needs to do, in part to comply with Homeland Security, is they need to expand the perimeter of the stadium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
what a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
So when you go to Fenway Park, and I've talked about this before, but it's worth reiterating. Remember, where was Pat's last job?
New England,
Boston College.
Yeah.
When you go to Fenway Park, when I was a kid, you'd have to go. You go at the gate at the bleachers, or you go to the gate on Jersey Street. It used to be Yawkey Way. It's Jersey Street now. Jersey Street when I was a kid. Now it's back to being Jersey Street again, right? And you go into the gates, and the building was built in 1912 and redone in 1934, so it's different. So the Red Sox decided we need to expand our perimeter, and so what they do now is on Jersey Street. You go in there on the street. That's where the gate entrance is. On the street. Mm-hmm. And you go through plenty of areas to go through because it's a street. Okay? You get through. Okay, now I'm through. Now I can go into the ballpark anytime I want, anywhere I want. I can go over here to the souvenir store, whatever I want, or I can get some food out here from vendors, whatever. Right? They've got street parties going on and things like that. But the ability to get through the gate, because they expanded the perimeter, made a big difference. Penn State's expanding its perimeter with the idea of maybe doing a couple of other things with it, but they need to expand the perimeter.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And it's like...
And with even the fence they put in, I think the biggest thing, just on the outside looking in, well, first of all, look at pro football stadiums, especially around the country. That, and, I know people joke about Philadelphia, and I get it with the safety matters. You know what? That fence, for a secure reason, is a big upgrade. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things they did when they built Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. That was one big thing they put there, and I'm telling you, it makes a difference. There's no question from a security perspective. That kind of fence is going to make a difference.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's all part of moving forward with what you need to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's certain things that you're doing because it's great for the fans. Mm-hmm. It's great for the stadium and so forth. There are other things that you actually have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the fans' perspective, the one thing Penn State has done, I think, especially in the last couple of years, is listen. I think that's the one thing when you look at it. When they first, let's look from a student perspective, they first made the change on the ID where it was, not necessarily having to show your ID like the old days.
Yeah.
Getting into that gate was a long, long wait. And they've listened. They're improving it. There's no question about it. Right. I think that's...
I'm not saying they're putting the gates out there yet or whatever.
I'm not saying it's perfect either.
But I'm giving you an example of expanding a perimeter and the possibilities that it brings with it that makes entering and leaving exponentially better for everybody. You can do that by expanding the perimeter. God forbid anything happens.
No.
And you've got to get people out of there. It's not getting them in there. No. To me, it's like, getting God forbid if something happens, you got to get them out of there. Mm-hmm.
And it's happened before. It's happened, we've had severe weather, and thankfully that is the worst.
Well, no, I did that game at Michigan State where everybody had to exit.
Absolutely.
I mean, we didn't have to exit. We were already inside.
Yeah.
But everybody in the stadium had to exit.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so it's not like I've never been in a situation like that before. I have.
We've had a couple spring games here. We've had, I believe, Pitt here in 2018 or 2019, whatever year that was another one. Yeah, and it does happen. It's fortunately here, it's a safe area, and we've not had to evacuate for other reasons. But even for something like that, it's much better with what they've been able to do.
Yeah. So all interesting stuff.
Yeah.
On this particular day, we haven't really talked about baseball.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see the Florida win yesterday, by the way, because I was in Williamsport, but I was doing.
I had to go somewhere, so I missed the tail end. Of course, I saw the 1-1 into the eighth inning.
I had to.
That was it.
I had a Spikes game up there last night, and so I didn't see any of it. And then when I got there, it was 1-1 in the seventh.
That's where I went into the eighth inning and I couldn't stay any longer. I had to get going. I had prior commitment and then missed the end of it.
I mean, but obviously a great win because I guess it was 1-0 in the sixth.
Yeah, it was 1-0 into the sixth. They had tied the game. Yep.
Tied the game.
Florida had so many chances in that game up to the sixth inning to tie that game. Couldn't do it, and finally they tie it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, again, you talked about at the beginning, the job ESPN does with that coverage is incredible. I don't think there's any question the job they do with Williamsport. The other part of it, the job Williamsport does with it, is incredible.
Yeah.
With what they do is absolutely incredible. They understand the world we're in right now. I think when you look at it, the concession prices are spectacular. Admission is still free. Things like that. Hey, they can't control the parking. I know you're going to say, hey, parking, they can't control that, guys and gals. But I think from every perspective they can control, I think Williamsport does an outstanding job.
One complaint after another with you. If they're not giving you a police escort in your own parking spot,
I do get the police escort. I do get the police escort.
Yes, but the police escort is supposed to be in front of you, not in back.
It's close enough. But
close enough. Close enough.
I had a couple of people tell me they parked on the highway. I said, well, you probably shouldn't be doing that.
When I'm 15?
Yeah, I think they were parked. I was hoping 15. I pray they're not parked on 80 getting on that exit. You got a long walk if you're doing that.
I mean 180. Well, 180 would be what you're thinking.
115 or 15 is what I'm thinking. Yeah, but yeah, parking is an issue, but it's not anything they can do anything about. That location, there's not much you can do about it parking-wise.
I mean, I've never been there for a game. I've been to the park a couple times.
It's tough to park, and they have a point. There's no question they have a point.
I've seen the parking, or the parking lot, so I understand it would be an issue. I have gone past there, by the way, when they were playing a game, but I was on my way from a speaking engagement in Selinsgrove. Went past it when they were playing a game at Williamsport.
I was there. My Little League was there in 1997, so I was there for those games. That's the only ones I've been to in terms of a game. I've visited Williamsport. I've taken a tour of this. When I was a kid, I toured the stadium. Obviously, went into the Little League Museum and all of those things. When I was younger, into the Reptile Museum, despite being terrified of snakes, I braved myself.
It's just every time I turn around, it's just another emotional issue with you.
That one is a tough one. That one is a tough issue.
I just feel between you and Joe. Oh, by the way, I got it. I had to tell a Jerry story.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, uh-oh. So he comes into the booth late in the game the other night. And he's got this takeout styrofoam, whatever. Okay. And he comes in and it's like you can smell it right away. He says, wow, barbecue wings. He goes, yeah. He says, this is great. He says, I just found these. I said, you just found them? He says, yeah, and I got a chicken sandwich and I got a burger. I said, well, I hope you and your family enjoy your meal. I said, you just found this big thing of wings? Absolutely. You want to know where he found them? Can you make a guess?
Where he found the wings?
Yep.
Let's see. It is not a fancy joint, I'm sure.
No, it's not even. No. Okay. Remember, he's working at the ballpark.
Uh-huh.
He found the wings in the players' lounge. The food had been put out for the players' post-game spread, and he thought
he intercepted it.
And he thought it was for him, and he took it. He took the players' food. Hi.
Oh man, I gotta say I have never done that.
Just the lowest form of. Wow. So I can't believe it. I just found him. When he said he found him, I'm thinking, what do you mean you just found? Was it like on?
I was thinking.
I kept thinking, who sells wings I kept thinking, who sells wings in the ballpark?
That's what my first thought was, the ballpark too.
Right.
But when he said I just found them, I knew it was free food somewhere somehow.
Right.
Like it was a buffet of some sort. And yeah, I didn't put two and two together, but yeah,
I'm thinking to
it makes sense now.
I'm thinking to myself, just found him. Like, I'm thinking, who sells wings in the ballpark? I mean, do they sell wings in the ballpark? I mean, I've gone to concession stands. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
There's chicken tenders,
there's chicken
and things
tenders
like that.
and stuff, but I don't think there's wings that I know of, at least. I gotta admit, I've not in depth looked at the menu, but I don't think so.
Did you get your bobblehead the other night?
I did.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I had the chance to talk to Joe for a little bit. That was nice.
I can't wait to catch up with Joe and find out what he thought of you.
Oh, I'd say as far as I know, it was good things.
I'm kidding. I just found them. You just found them? Right. Well, then also, like, I start thinking to myself, what do you mean you just found them? Right. And I'm doing the game, and as I'm doing the game, I finally get done with the half inning, and I'm thinking to myself, he took the players' buffet food.
Oh, my goodness.
Because there's only one other place you can find food in that ballpark. It's there. Because everything in the...
And you're not allowed to bring food in, so yeah, that makes sense.
Well, no,
yeah.
I mean, in other words, and the press food that night wasn't wings.
No.
And it was all gone by the time you get there. It was just like the eighth inning.
Oh, yeah, no.
Oh, where do we find these people? Where do we find these people? Another signature moment for the club. Yeah.
I got to admit, I have never done that.
Well, there's one person in this building that has. And we all know who that is now. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go over and see what James has to say. We'll talk to you. We'll have a couple of guests tomorrow, as a matter of fact. A couple of guests. Looking forward to that. I mean, a couple of guests on Wednesday, too, so I'm not he's sitting across from you till Thursday.
Oh.
So, yeah, I have a quarterback club Wednesday.
Wait, Wednesday. I knew that one. Yep.
Yeah. Tomorrow I'm in Pittsburgh.
All right.
Wednesday I'm...
Just in Pittsburgh on Friday. Well, Monroeville. Close enough.
Well, they won't let you in the city limits.
No. They see me enter the tunnel. They close.